Good evening. On behalf of the trustees and the members of the managing committee of the KR Kama Oriental Institute, it is my privilege to welcome you all to this presentation by Dr. Jaswandi Wamburkar on the topic of feminism as reflected in this Stree magazine, which has been a part of the Avabai Wadia Research Fellowship, which she has undertaken, and this is part of the requirement of the presentation. We are indeed fortunate to have with us Dr. Arvind Ganachari, who is the mainstay of the entire academic standards of the Avabai Research Fellowship. Dr. Ganachari has been professor and head of the Department of History at the University of Mumbai, and he has indeed a very erudite scholar who has published not only many academic articles, but two very seminal, I would say three seminal publications, one on Gopal Agarkar, the other on social and cultural history, the third one, the most recent one, on the Indian role in the First World War. Indeed, we at the Kama Oriental Institute would not be able to operate this program of the standards which he continues to maintain as far as assessing the work of the research scholars, were it not for Dr. Ganachari. I will now request Dr. Ganachari to take over the proceedings.
Thank you very much, Professor Nawaz. I feel indeed privileged to preside over today because the topic is something which is very dear to my heart too. Today it is Dr. Jaswandi Wamburkar, who was awarded a research fellowship, Avabai Wadia Research Fellowship, in the memory of Firoz Mehta on her subtopic, Feminism as reflected in the Marathi magazine Stree, 1930-1975. Professor Dr. Jaswandi, who has been an associate professor, and she heads the department at the SNDT University of History Department. She has been in the teaching profession for a long time, maybe 25 years. And I must say, I was a beneficiary of her intelligence as well as of her help in producing my Marathi book, which she very much translated. She has also brought out a book on fellowship, my friend, Professor Raja Dixit, in a felicitation volume, which is extremely well received by the academia. Now she has published her own thesis, which is a contribution by itself as Strivad and Vibhavari Shirurkar. Something of this kind of thing was most desideratum, was very much needed. And now she is going to present today on the magazine Stree, which had pre-independence and post-independence existence. And one of the earliest which created feminist consciousness in Maharashtra among the Marathi knowing people, Marathi readership. Today she is going to speak on that. She has been, Professor Dr. Jaswandi has produced number of papers and presented them at number of venues, forums, symposia as well as conferences. And in tune to her academic pursuits, she is going to talk today on her work that she has completed, and she is presenting today Feminism as reflected in the Marathi magazine. I would not like to take more time, but before Dr. Jaswandi starts, I would only make one request to all the listeners that they should mute themselves so that there would not be any disturbance while making the presentation. May I request Dr. Jaswandi Wamburkar, please. Dr. Jaswandi, please.
Thank you, sir. Professor Nawaz Modi, Professor Arvind Ganachari, who is chairing the session today. At the very outset, I would like to thank the trustees of the K.R. Kama Oriental Institute and the distinguished members on the governing body for being very generous to give me this wonderful fellowship. I'm also thankful to them for giving me being extra generous in giving me more time to complete this project. Because of COVID scenario, I took more time to complete it. And thirdly, I feel this is a wonderful opportunity now, today, to present my research findings on my project. And in fact, when I was told that this lecture would not be conducted offline, I was little disappointed because I like that beautiful hall of the K.R. Kama Oriental Institute, and I had always dreamed that I will be making a presentation there. But then I realized that it is better to have it online, because then many friends and scholars from within Mumbai and outside Mumbai also can join. So I hope there are scholars here and many more might come. So I'm really glad that this is an August gathering in front of whom I'm making this presentation. I can see some scholars like Professor Raja Dikshit, my guru, Professor Madhula Ramana, and many others. I can't see everybody's name over here. So now I'll begin my presentation. This was my dream project, and this magazine about magazine Stree, and so I will be putting in front of you my research findings of the project entitled Feminism as Reflected in the Marathi magazine Stree for the period 1930 to 1975. Now, before I start and give my actual research findings, I would like to jot down the theoretical framework in which I'm working, and I would like to contextualize my topic. Women's history in last few decades has emerged as a very significant trend in history writing, and women's magazines have proved a very significant source to study women's history. Unfortunately, for a long time, women were portrayed as very passive recipients of the women's reform movement. But many historians, such as Padma Angal, Meera Kosambi, Tanika Sarkar, to just mention few, they have made scholarly use of the women's magazines or women's writings to underline the role of women in challenging patriarchy and reshaping their role in the patriarchal world. Marathi women's magazines have served over a time as a strong indicator of feminism in Maharashtra. And Stree was the longest running women's magazine in Marathi since 1930 to 86. Despite being a very popular magazine, it had played a seminal role in disseminating the idea of feminism to the larger Marathi readership. When we use magazine as a source to reconstruct history, we also have to understand that magazine contains distinct elements such as editorial columns, advertisements, fiction, and readers' responses. And hence, magazines is as a genre, it produces diverse and often conflicting viewpoints presented by many authors expressed in the various issues of the magazine. Secondly, just like history, any type of literature, including magazines, also has four parameters, such as space, time, history, individual, and society. So the way Terry Eagleton perceives literature as both a social force and social product, today I'm trying to argue that Stree became a very significant source as well as a social product to disseminate the various ideas in its own times. Since I'm using the term feminism, I would like to say a few words about that. Feminism is a liberating political ideology which reasons out the subordination of women, and it makes an effort for greater power and control for women of their lives. Uh, India has a long tradition of feminist thinkers, starting from Gautam Buddha to the modern thinkers like Mahatma Phule, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, Mahatma Gandhi. So hence it is a worthwhile exercise to bring to light the feminist thought advocated in Indian women's magazines, which could be a pathfinder to the feminist movement in India. With this brief theoretical framework, I now would like to talk about the magazine, which began in it was launched on 15th of August 1930 by the editor Shankarrao Kirloskar. Just to give a few lines about, I need to contextualize what was the time when this was launched. It was a period when it was a period when of a significant change that has occurred in the first 3 decades of the 20th century, which is called as the rise of new woman. Now, this very term of new woman has been used in academic research in Western world, and the correlation between the magazines and a new woman has been dealt with by many scholars. However, in India, the term new woman has been used by a very few scholars like Geraldine Forbes, and much research has not been produced about that. So many women in these times began to show their talents in the various fields like education, arts, journalism, theater, medicine, cinema, politics, and social activism. And as we all know that this was also a period of when under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi, the Indian national movement has become a mass movement, and women participated on a large scale in this movement. There were women's organizations such as AIWC and many local and regional organizations also came up during these times. And they were trying to again, the feminists, they were trying to initiate feminist politics. They were trying to gain more legal rights for women. So this was a context when Stree was launched. Of course, Stree was not the first women's magazine in Marathi. There is a long tradition, and since I am short of time, I will not be talking much about that because I have to concentrate more on the feminist thought that was disseminated in the Marathi magazine Stree. So Shankarrao Kirloskar, in the very first issue, he mentioned, and I quote him, "This magazine will assist every woman to understand her noble duty and make her realize her potential power. It will render ample thoughts and ideas in order to make her daily life happier, brighter, more cultured, and advanced." Shankarrao launched this magazine with the subtitle, "A Useful, Inspiring, and Entertaining Magazine Dedicated to Women's Well-Being, a Magazine of Women in Maharashtra." Later, after my talk, I will be showing you some cover pages of the magazine, which probably you might like to see. Shankarrao, something about the editor I feel like talking about, because why he felt like launching such a magazine. So Shankarrao worked as an editor of this magazine from August 1950 to January 1959. Just a minute, I will just try to mute all so that there is. So in his early childhood in Kolhapur, he developed interest in drawing, painting, and photography. And he completed his education from JJ School of Arts. Basically, he was an artist. He wanted to do take further education outside, but there was a turning point in his life, and his mother, who was sick, and in the last stage of tuberculosis, asked him to join his uncle Lakshmanrao Kirloskar's firm, and this is how he joined the advertisement department of the Kirloskar factory, which was a plow making factory. Now, Shankar received an issue of Ford Times magazine, which was launched in US by the Ford Motor Company, and so he felt that why Kirloskar shouldn't have their own newspaper or magazine, so that they need not persuade the editors of other magazines for the advertisements of their own products. And this is how Kirloskar Khabar was launched in 1916. And this magazine had a page, Striyanche Pan, women's page. And the Kirloskar Khabar came up with a special issue on women in 1929. And at that time, Shankarrao felt why not to start a women's magazine, because it was received very well. And he went to London for further education, and there he came across the autobiography of Edward Bok, entitled Americanization of Edward Bok, who was Edward Bok was editor of Ladies' Home Journal for a period 1889 to 1919, and it was a very, very popular women's magazine. So we got to know more about why Shamwaki, he used to be called as Shamwaki, Shankarrao Kirloskar. He has written an autobiography with the title Shamwaki, and there he has devoted an entire chapter that why he felt like introducing such a magazine. He felt that, in fact, Kirloskar Khabar and Manohar and Stree, these three magazines of Kirloskar, they all, these were introduced with a objective of modernizing the society, the Marathi speaking society. Now, initially, a few lines about how it proceeded. The magazine Stree used to be a 40-page magazine in the initial years. And gradually it rose to 64 pages, and in 1934 it rose to 72 pages, and soon it became very popular. And not just in the Marathi speaking community outside Bombay Presidency and the other regions such as Goa, Karnataka, and Madhya Pradesh, and this it could be seen, the growing popularity of the magazine could be seen by the rising number of the subscribers, which became 18,000 in 1947, and which was in a way a record in the history of the Marathi magazines. A typical issue of Stree used to have editorial and articles, poems, short stories, travelogues, and certain columns which kept on changing from time to time. This period when this magazine was launched, though it was a period of rise of new women, still so the social change was happening at a very low pace, and there was a gender bias in every walk of life. So Stree became a mouthpiece for the new woman to propagate the changing ideas and aspirations of the new woman, and it provided a platform to them to come up with the new issues, whatever the new thoughts and the debates, what they could accommodate in the magazine. Shankarrao, along with his wife Anandibai Kirloskar, they used to play a very significant role in shaping the content of the magazine. They used to launch various, debates on various themes such as reform in women's costumes, which today we might find very elementary, but in those times, these kind of changes were also happening at a very low pace. So 9-yard sari or 5-yard sari, or whether the work of the women's movement is accomplished, or payment for domestic work, these kind of issues they had taken up. Shankarrao, the founder editor of Stree, was a very pragmatic industrialist, and we have to also understand that he handled the financial side of the magazine in a very competitive manner, and that is why when other women's magazines were getting closed down after 5 to 6 years, this magazine worked for a long period of more than 50 years. He followed a policy of accommodating articles of both men as well as women. So there was no restriction that only women will write because it is a women's magazine. He felt that there could be men, and in fact, if we look at the women's reform movement, it was all started by the men reformers. So, in continuation with that tone, he felt that men, in fact, if we want to bring change in the society, the mindset of men towards women needs to be changed. So they also should be part of this entire discourse. He also followed a policy of regularly paying honorarium to the contributors, and he used to invite the budding women writers of those times in a very dignified manner. And there are, when the 400th issue of Stree was launched, they organized a get together wherein Maltibai Bedekar, a well-known writer, she had expressed that he made us writer in the way that he used to invite us, and he used to encourage us to write. The letter correspondence between Shankar Rao and Anandibai Shirke, a well-known writer, is available. And there also one can see that how the letters written by Shankar Rao are available. So how he used to encourage by continuously having a rapport with the writers. Later on, after Shankar Rao, the next generation editors, Mukund Rao Kirloskar and his wife Shanta Kirloskar, and then Vidya Bal also joined with them afterwards. They also followed the legacy of Shankar Rao, and they also invited, and in fact, by that time, Stree had made such a name that any good writer used to feel it as an honor to be invited to produce any or contribute any article or writings to Stree. So with this brief background about this magazine, now I would like to talk about the main research findings of mine, in the sense that how what kind of feminist thought it has disseminated through the period 1930 to 75. Now, for the sake of convenience, this idea of feminism, I have divided into three parts, and in my project, I have contributed 3 different articles. Here, I would like to share that the first one is in what way Stree gave a contribution towards initiating a legal feminist thought on the legal reforms for women. Secondly, about the discourse on women's work and domesticity and housework. And the third is in general women's liberation. What were the thoughts contributed in this magazine? To begin with the legal reforms, again, I would like to just contextualize the times the situation of those times, that the legal status of the Indian women, and especially of the Hindu women, was really miserable in those times, because various customs, there was ban on abortion laws. There were no abortion laws. I mean, in the sense, there was a ban on abortion, and women did not have a right for that. There was no law of divorce. And in the absence of the law of divorce, the condition of the women used to become very miserable, the married women, if they are not happy in the marriage. Also, women did not have any property rights, and they also did not have any voting rights. So all these issues were taken up by Stree. Shankar Rao, he invited various scholars, such as Rajaratna V.V. Joshi. Then these were all legal experts, and K.B. Gajendra Gadkar, D.V. Shidore, and many more, who wrote through continuous columns. Like, they came up with some columns, and they informed the readers about the burning issues in the Indian society and the legal aspect of those issues. Rajaratna V.V. Joshi, who wrote a column, Batsur Zodpi, meaning mismatched pairs, from September 40 to 42, In fact, Shankar Rao felt like having this column and another column like Kaidacha Salla, that is legal advice, wherein a lot of, he realized, Shankar Rao, that many women are writing letters to Stree and they are trying to get some legal advice. And so he started this column that anybody, if they want to keep their identity secret, they can just write the letters which will be produced without mentioning their names. And the legal advice will be published in the magazine. So this column went on for more than 20 years. And then Hindu Striyanche Kaideshir Hakk, this was another column which was run by V.V. Joshi. And he was a very well-known legal expert of those times, who he had already written such a series of articles in Masik Manoranjan, another very popular Marathi magazine. And he had many books to his credit also. In fact, he had become instrumental in initiating legal reforms in the princely state of Baroda. So he informed through his columns to women readers, and also to, of course, the male readers also used to be the, this magazine used to be family magazine, Stree. It was not merely just a women's magazine. So the Act of Divorce and law of the Bill of abortion for Hindu widows, or benefits of registered marriage, then reforms in marriage laws, Bill of polygamy, maintenance for widows, rights of abortion and property rights, all these were discussed by these scholars like B.V. Joshi and K.B. Gajendra Gadkar. And they also brought it very systematically that the British rule in India, the kind of changes that they have brought, they are really disastrous in terms of the legal reforms. And the understanding of the British rule about the Indian judicial system was quite superficial. And so they also explained the need for the law of different laws, like divorce, for example. And Shankar Rao used to write editorials and initiate and encourage women and men to write what they feel about this, because this was very important for the effective implementation of any law, that you have to create a favorable mindset in the society. So this is what Shankar Rao and Anandibai, they were trying to do. In 1941, the colonial government had appointed a 4-member Hindu law committee. I mean, most of us know about this Rao committee after the chairman B.N. Rao. And then the Hindi code bills also came up after, in the post-independence times. Then when India got independence and Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru was the prime minister under the government of Indian National Congress, this codification and these reforms were initiated, and they succeeded in passing the 4 Hindu bills in 1955 and 56, the Hindu Marriage Act and Hindu Succession Act, Hindu Minority and Guardian Act, and Hindu Adoption and Maintenance Act. We all know that the role of Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar, who was the law minister, was very significant in this regard. So Stree played a significant role in mobilizing public opinion in favor of all these progressive enactments, and through continuous discussion and the detailed reports about the parliamentary discussions and press comments they used to publish, and to make the general reader, especially the women readers, aware about these happenings. So this was a significant period because AIWC and many other women's organizations, they definitely played a significant role in constantly pursuing these matters. And these laws could be effectively implemented, and Stree definitely played a role in disseminating the important thoughts pertaining to these legal reforms in the Marathi-speaking community. Now I would like to share my views about in what way the magazine also came up with discussions on women's work and domesticity and housework. And I would like to begin this with by quoting Maniben Kara, who wrote in the April 1932 issue of Stree, wherein she says, and I quote, "I do not agree to believe at all that certain professions are permitted for women while few others are not. If our women need to progress, they should first acquire the eligibility to earn livelihood, and they should fully establish their economic freedom." Unquote. So right from its inception in 1930s, Stree strongly supported the idea that women should come out of the traditional role of homemaker, and they should play a significant role in the family and also in the nation building process. Stree used to have a regular column throughout the period of study, that is 30 to 75, and they used to contribute articles, small biographies of worthy women who have from diverse fields such as music and theater and education, research, and so on. And this is how I came across that they came up with more than 400 such articles about these worthy women, which definitely must have had a deep impact on the readers, that if women can contribute, these women are doing well, why not me? And this must have had a very good impact. So apart from that, Stree used to have a column such as Mahilancha Charvali, women's movements, then Mahila Jagat, women's world, and Striyancha Samstha, women's institutions. So through these columns, Stree continuously updated the knowledge of the women readers about the happenings at local level, at regional level, what was happening all over India, and what the women's organizations are trying to do for women themselves. So this platform was kind of a provided them a kind of a dialogue wherein they can understand and they can initiate some kind of a rapport with the happenings in the women's world. Now, several articles penned by Krishnabai Kolatkar. Now, I will try to. I mean, it's not possible to take in review all the articles because they are more than 50 or 100. So the significant one I will be talking here. So articles penned by Krishnabai Kolatkar, then Girabai Joshi, Krishna, Keshav Vaidya, Barutai Khare. Through their stories and articles, they projected and very strongly put forth that this is a time if women want to come out and work, the society should be ready for this. Not only that, in fact, the burden of housework should be shared by the male members in the family and the other members in the family. I would like to mention here that a story which was written by Barutai Khare, Maji Goshta Ani Sahiteche Bhashya, wherein she mentions that how the women are finding it so difficult, and even being educated, they are supposed to be just homemaker, and it's very difficult for them because they feel depressed and they feel disappointed that the homes have become cages for them, and so they feel like going out. And the heroine of the story, she feels that there is a gender politics between her and the relationship with her husband. So this is how perhaps the editors continuously encourage these kind of articles, and the tone one can see, though there were articles and a few articles and stories which were against the entry of women into the public field. As I mentioned, diverse views were accommodated in the magazine, but as an editor, Shankar Rao continuously opened up new debates, and this is how a very important debate came up, which is about the payment of domestic work. And I find it very amazing that in the magazine in 1954, Shankar Rao is writing this. And this is amazing because Even a few years ago in Lok Satta, in the Chaturanga supplement, when this issue came up, women took it in a very emotional manner rather than taking it in a very rational spirit. And they felt that perhaps they do not want any remuneration for the housework and things like that. So he, through the editorials, tried to argue that men should realize that women like to live a life with dignity and respect. So every time they do not want to ask for money to their husbands, and they want to have economic freedom. Also, they want to work because they want to use their full potential as a human being. So one can see this changing consciousness, not just in men, but also in women, the way they were taking up this issue of women's entry into work, and also remuneration for the housework. Apart from this, it's not just a middle class women's issues Stree took up. It is also the issue of women workers, which have been taken up by some scholars and activists. Because this is a period of when in 1939, when the Second World War broke, and there were issues like inflation and unemployment, and so in Mumbai and Solapur in 1937, and then in 1940, many women workers, they initiated strikes. And so there were some writers like Meenakshi Kolatkar, who herself was a leader of the working class movement in Solapur, and she gave the thrilling, entire event. She narrated that how BD workers from Solapur, in good numbers, they are coming outside, and the changing consciousness in them, she tried to portray through these articles. Another very significant change in these times, one can see that many socialist leaders and like Godavari Parulekar, Meenakshi Sane, and Usha Deshmukh, they were so influenced by the progress which was made by the Russian women after the Bolshevik Revolution. They felt that this same model should be followed by India, and Indian women could be free only when then they could be made free from the drudgery of housework. So women should, and even a lot of like women's organizations should come ahead, and they should try to have these facilities like baby care center should be launched, so that women will not have to take care of the housework much, and they should be able to go out and they will be free from the housework. This issue I will take up again once when I'll talk about the women's liberation movement, how it was discussed in Stree. In the post-independence times, about the discourse on women's work and this thing. One more thing that I would like to mention here, that right from the beginning, Stree used to produce articles about women's domesticity, so parenting and cooking, issues, child care. They used to have articles. No doubt they used to have this, and so despite that fact, if you will look at the other content of the magazines, they always reinforce that even being mother, I mean, women should be able to do the way men also can work in the public domain. Women should also come outside and work in the public domain. In the post-independence times, one can see that there were women such as Manikuntala Sen, Sushila Chikte, then Kamalabai Tilak, who is a well-known women writer, then Maltibai Bedekar and Krishnabai Mote. They all expressed the problems of the working women and also the social psyche towards them. They felt that the attitude towards working women needs to be changed, and what you called as the working women syndrome, that women themselves, Maltibai Bedekar's article, the title is Milavticha Manatil Dwandva. So some kind of dialectic is there in her mind, that she herself is under that guilt that she must work the same way a housemaker works in the house, and she feels that when she has to juggle between both these fronts, what kind of problem she faces. Similarly, in 1968, Stree came up with a special issue on working women, and many writers, they expressed that most of the women are working because it is the requirement of the family, and in fact they are not able to it's not that they want to do career. In fact, it is the requirement that is of the family, and still the family and the patriarch of family is not getting molded, and they expected that the male members in the family should come ahead and take more responsibility of the children. So this is a continuous demand that in the post-independence times came up on the forefront. Um, yes. Now I'll go to the third part of my presentation, that is the discourse in Stree on women's liberation movement. And I would like to begin my quote, this talk or this discussion with a quote of Chandrakala Hate, who was a professor in SNDT Women's University of Sociology, and who was a regular writer in Stree. And she, in her article, which she wrote in the June 1931 issue, see, so it was just the first year of the magazine, but see how clearly she mentions her idea of women's liberation. And I quote, "What is women's freedom? A woman is a human being first, then she is a woman. Hence, as a human being, not only in the intellectual field, but also in politics, religion, law, in all such spheres, she should get all the rights like men. She should not be deprived of anything being a woman. It is her sacred duty to emancipate herself, her family, and her society. It is important to have freedom of thought and action to perform this sacred duty." Unquote. This quote suggests itself that how comprehensive her idea, and so there was so much clarity in her thought about women's liberation. I would also like to mention there's another writer who was a regular writer in Stree, Usha Deshmukh, who wrote a article, Stree Swatantracha Swarup wa Tatvik Bhumika, that is Nature of Women's Freedom and Theoretical Position. Wherein she explains that her idea of women's freedom and the essence of which is as follows: women and men should be equal and free component of the society. Their economic, political, and social status should be equal. The society should provide work to the women who want to work. Birth control should be an issue of her choice. Every woman should have freedom of marriage and divorce. She should be free from the forced housework. Rearing of child should be the responsibility of the society and the state. So one can see that the influence of Marxist feminism was very much there on some of the writers of Stree. There is an interesting series of articles which was launched in Stree, which was written by Dr. V.K. Kirloskar, who was the father of Shankarrao Kirloskar, and it was a series based on the communist philosopher Frederick Engels' work, a very famous work, The Origin of the Family, Private Property, and the State. And this work is considered as a very seminal work in the Marxist feminist thought. So V.K. Kirloskar, and in this series of articles, he has mentioned and how unless we bring this communist revolution over here, and unless this patriarchy comes to an end, women's slavery will not come to an end. So quite interesting, these kind of thoughts were expressed in Stree. If we look at the other writers who were writing in Stree from the initial phase, from 30-40 onwards, they seem to have been influenced by many Western feminist thinkers. And as I mentioned before, that many of them were influenced by the Russian women and the progress made by her in Russia. Uh, they uh, they have written articles in pertaining to that. Secondly, they also made the readers aware what was happening in Germany. So the fascist tendencies, what in Germany, and how they have reinforcing the role of motherhood. And this is also, they have taken cognizance of that, and they're trying to make the Indian women aware that the same scenario should not happen here. And this is something which is very, very interesting. So our PR Tongaonkar and Vidyadhar Devdar in an article, they warned the readers about the fascist tendencies in Europe and India. So in India also they are talking about, and which were trying to reinforce the aim of women's life as being good mothers and good housewives. Another writer, H.R. Mahajan, he explained the evolution of marriage system in Russia and also the changing love relationship in the Russian family after the Bolshevik Revolution. And Stree published many articles making the readers aware about the dictatorship in Italy and Germany and its impact on women's life. It's very interesting that Shankar Rao, in the editorials, he made the readers aware that after the rise of Hitler, the traditional ideals of domesticity, femininity, and motherhood has been reinforced in Germany. And he informed the readers how the new political trend in India, glorifying the traditional role of for women, was gaining currency. And he pointed out the stark similarity between the ideals proposed for women in Nazi Germany and in traditional Aryan women. So the revivalist tendencies, what they were doing in India, the way they were opposing the legal reforms and all these tendencies. So he further presented a contrast picture in communist Russia, wherein women were enjoying freedom and they made progress in various walks of life. So he appealed to the women readers to make distinction in these two ideals. And in the similar fashion, many women writers such as Shanta Kulkarni and Sudha Phadke, see all these names, some of them one can see that some of them later made their names and they became very popular, like Malti Bedekar or Gita Sane or Krishnabai Moti. But there are many writers who were just lay women, and they were contributing, and perhaps this was the success of Stree, that they could make women vocal about the issues concerning them. So Shanta Bhale Rao, she took a review of the women's liberation movement in the Western world, and she emphasized the importance of women's organization in the liberation of women. And this has been a most oftenly discussed topic in Stree, that women's organizations are mainly taking the issues of the middle class women, and they must go to the grassroots level, and they should take up the issues of the rural women, the peasant women, the tribal women. So they realize, Malti Bedekar and many of them, Meenakshi Sardesai, they mentioned that AIWC and its different branches, they are working mainly in the shells of just the middle class women. This was coming again and again. Now, as far as this whole idea of women's liberation is concerned, there was a general feeling in the entire country after gaining the political independence, and also after these legal reforms which were initiated once they were achieved, like after the Hindu Code Bill that was passed and the new constitution that came into being. Shankar Rao, he realized and he felt that there is a lull in the women's organizations. And in February 1951, he initiated a kind of a discussion that do we really need any women's movement now? What is the agenda now with us? And it's quite interesting that more than 30 women writers responded to that, and they realized that, well, though we have achieved political freedom, we need to work very hard if we have to bring change and bring gender equality in real sense in the society. Um, Now, I would like to share some of these significant writings that came up in the post-independence period, and I would like to mention Dada Dharmadikari, the known Gandhian feminist scholar. In fact, he wrote an article in Sadhana, and it created a stir in Maharashtra. And see how from one weekly Marathi magazine to Stree, this whole discussion was taken up, and women writers including Maltibai Bedekar, she took it up and she felt that whatever Dada Dharmadikar is writing is it really feasible? Wherein he, whatever that he, in fact, he had not written an article as such in Sadhana, he had delivered a lecture. And somebody has taken summed it up, and that summary was written in a form of an article in Sadhana. So, as a rejoinder to this, Dada Dharmadikari came forward and he wrote an article in Stree, and he wanted to make some clarification about the misunderstanding that those were done about his positions. So, what he was trying to say is the women should not live a life in the context of just motherhood and wife. So he was taking some pertinent issues such as sexuality of women and how women are not allowed to, if women always try to look at their entire life. This is what that was happening, that after independence, those women who had come out of their houses, they felt that, well, we have achieved freedom, and they went back to their homes and confined their roles as a homemaker. So this is what Dada Dharmadikari was pointing towards, and he wanted that women should lead a life. He was not saying that they should not marry or they should not have children. This is what it was misconceived. But he felt that they should have their independent identity. The way male members, they work, and they work as husbands and in different roles as even fathers, but that doesn't mean that they don't have an independent identity. So this is what he was trying to say. And he was also he took up a very significant issue of women's sexuality, that even women should not feel continuously dependent on men for being raped or for getting some kind of protection. For the sake of protection, they should ultimately they become slave to men, because they always feel that they need protection to save themselves for chastity. So he felt that, in fact, even if a woman is raped, it should not be considered that it is a stigma on her. Perhaps the way any person, if he meets with an accident, we treat him as a victim or as a patient. Similarly, a woman should not be should be treated like that, and the entire society should try to help her come out of that trauma. And this is how even he took up the issue of the those children which were born out of the different after the partition, the way women were raped in different communities. So he felt that these children should be seen in a very dignified manner. They should be able to lead their life, and even these women should be able to live a similar kind of a life. So this is something which is very significant thought that Stree contributed. Then one can see that after 1955 or something, the Stree is, because of perhaps the in those times, then the women's movement has ceased, and this had an impact on Stree also. So one can see that they felt as if the role of women in the changing scenario has changed, and therefore till 68 or something, and I will be talking about these three phases later, but in terms of women's liberation, I would like to point it out here that from 1955 to say 1968-70, a lot of new columns came up which reinforced the role of women as mothers and as homemakers. A lot of columns and a lot of advertisements, and there was the number of articles pertaining to women's liberation reduced to a major extent in this period. And then again in the 1970 onwards till 75, one can see there is a discontent which was there in the society also. A lot of labor movements came up, Shahada, tribal movement, then Mrunal Gore's anti-price rise movement, all these came up after 1970. And Stree, you can see this change again in Stree also. Perhaps this change could be attributed to the changing social ethos of the times. Also, I would say that change could be attributed to uh, the role of Vidya Bar as an editor um, whose interviews have been published, and I felt that she was trying to make changes in the tone and in the content of the magazine. And though she herself was not, her name was as editor did not appear, but she was trying to make these changes. And so one can see that in the March 1970 some kind of a symposium on mixed marriage, so intercaste marriages came up, and the personal narratives of those people who have done intercaste marriages that came up. But surprisingly, there is no mention of Dr. Ambedkar in any of the articles who had strongly put forth the need of intercaste marriages to end caste system. So these are some of the observations that also I would like to mention here. Again, there's a significant change that happened in 1971, wherein Bhanu Sridhankar and Shankarrao Kharat, they came up with some kind of articles on the Koli women, fisher women, and then Kolhati women, and Kaikadi women. So these are all tribal women, nomadic women, the Wadari women, and Agri women, which geographically they stay in Palghar district, and Lamani women, which are like nomadic women, and Thakur women. So these women coming from the so-called lower caste and busy in different kind of activities such as like Kolati as a performer and Tamasha performer, then Kaikadi as a nomadic community, and coming from a criminal tribe. And so they these articles showed that how the lifestyle and the hardships that these women have to undergo, there's a stark difference between the realities of these women and the realities of the middle class women. The life is so different. And they discuss their costumes, their occupations, even the cover pages of those in those times, like in 1971. You can see the difference, and soon I'll be showing you some of these cover pages. So, and then there was an article on Vithabhau Mang Naigaokar's interview taken by Datta Saraf. So one can see that the so-called women from the marginalized community and so-called lower caste, which did not appear much in the previous sections, in the previous period, now in the 1970, at least some of the articles, and there is a mention of Muslim Satyashodhak Samaj and the conference held at that. So one important uh, significant activity that Shanta Kirloskar as an editor, she came up with a serialized articles on Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex, which is a significant feminist book. With this, I can say that in the post-70 period, this brought a change in the consciousnesses of women, and many articles now, because of, I think I should wind it up. I am not taking the quotes and all everything, but many writers such as Suniti Pungalia and many others, they came up with the idea that women should this entire feminist struggle is not against men, it is against patriarchal structure. So one can see that this shift from liberal feminist attitude to from 1930 to 1975, and also shades of Marxist feminist thought coming up in between. And then in the 1970 onwards, radical feminism, what we call that, they realize that how gender is a social construct. This is what change that is happening in the this change in the tone of the magazine. So now in nutshell, I would like to say that the main conclusion about a few things I am going to I'll just read it out for you. This period of 1930 to 75 was a period of transition in Indian society, and through these three magazines, Kirloskar, Stree, and Manohar, um, uh, the editors were trying to create a society based on modern values such as freedom, equality, rationalism, brotherhood, and gender equality. So Stree propagated new ideas of femininity and masculinity, and also new kind of gender relations. And it was a period when ideas of home and housekeeping and home management and home decoration were also undergoing change. So this idea of new kitchen with more time consuming gadgets and vessels made up of steel and replacement of many other vessels and like devices such as burner, gas burner, or stove, cooker, rather than the traditional ways. The the society was trying to bring change, and Stree also became a significant propagator of these ideas. As a result of the lot of material changes, one can see that this Stree made this transition easier to disseminate these ideas, and one can see that the ideas, most of the ideas which were propagated by Stree were gradually internalized in the middle class families, Marathi speaking middle class families. So Stree realized that in order to bring changes in women's world, a change in different facets such as family, marriage system, religion, legal system, domesticity, economy, culture, religion, everywhere which was based on patriarchal setup and patriarchal mentality, change is required. And therefore, through continuous interventions and dialogue with the readers, Stree tried to bring this change to establish a society based on gender equality. So hence it can be said that Stree itself became a vibrant driving force in these 45 years for gender equality. And therefore the history of the journey of the magazine, stretching across a vast period of 45 years, is in a way an account of the history of women in Maharashtra and the changing consciousness in them. Now, though Stree predominantly it was a middle class magazine, and it sometimes tried to take up the issue of the issues of the women from the marginalized sections or working women or tribal women. It mainly remained basically a middle class magazine. Now, I would just, in 5 minutes, conclude by just mentioning the three phases which I can see in the ideological shifts that could be seen in these three phases. Stree was launched in 1930 on the backdrop of the Gandhian movement, and at that time, it was a vibrant period in the history of India, and so this was a period when Stree championed the cause of women's liberation by strongly supporting her legal, social, and economic freedom. After gaining political independence from the British rule, perhaps there was a lull, and in the post-1950 period, one can see that more emphasis was given to in Stree for portraying women's role as a mother and homemaker, and this change in the tone could be seen in the editorials and also in the various columns which were launched pertaining to childcare and parenting and so on. Also, this was a period when a lot of issues on special issues on women from Assam or women from Bengal, these kind of issues came up, perhaps because the editors and the tone was such that the women's issues have, because liberal feminism, this was a framework which Stree has accepted to a major extent, they realize that once this education, because of education and changing mindset in about women in the society, now this whole idea could be seen, this change could be seen now, and the work of Stree has come to an end perhaps, and therefore they came up with some different issues. As I mentioned, they came up with special issues about Indore Malwa, women's life in Indore Malwa or Marathwada or Gujarat. Perhaps there was not enough feed or enough thought process that was happening in Stree in those times. Again, the third phase, as I mentioned before, that gradually some discontent could be seen, and from 1970 onwards, the thrust on domesticity reduced, and various burning issues concerning women started getting prominence in the magazine, and it partially had an impact. The issue of peasant, worker, Dalit also were taken up by Stree. So, okay. Stree, as far as the feminist thought that has been disseminated through Stree is concerned, it kept reflecting mainly the liberal feminism, and sometimes some kind of theoretical position had been taken of Marxist feminism or existentialist or radical feminism, but mainly it confined as a middle class women's magazine. Despite these limitations, one can say that Stree played a prominent role in changing the social ethos and the social psyche of both men and women towards women for nearly 45 years. And any change does not get accepted in any society very easily. And therefore, a favorable mindset needs to be created for the change by continuously taking up issues and providing platform for debates and discussion in a tolerant manner. So that way, Stree played a significant role to bring out the voices, aspiration, and discontent of the Marathi women and help them in shaping a society based on gender equality. Stree did this pioneering work in bringing women on the horizon of Marathi journalism, and it became a regular trend in the post-independence times that women writers took up the issues in periodicals in the second half of the 20th century. It was partly a legacy of Stree. So a new band of writers such as Saudamini Rao, who came up with Baiza, then Vidyabal, who came up with Milun Sarajani, and Meena Deval, Chaya Datar, and Vinaya Khalpekar, and many others came up with Stree Uvacha and other women's magazines. And these all came up in the post-1975 period, and they produced some significant feminist writings. So it was a legacy of Stree. With this, I conclude here my talk. I would just like to show, if you permit, the slides. Yes.
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, sir. Yeah.
Because I have seen those and I have felt them excellent. So
Okay.
let the audience also know about them.
Fine. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Can you see the slides?
Yes, yes.
Yes. So these are some of the works, because there was not enough time to talk about the review of literature. So these are some of the works which have come up in last few years about the scholars have taken up of women's either magazines as a study. So Mangesh Kashyap has worked on Kirloskar magazine and Arun Shinde on the Satyashodak magazines. And as far as women's magazine, Marathi women's magazine are concerned, Swati Karve has come up with many books. I mentioned here only two. And there is this work, Goshta Pasastichi, written by Shanta Kirloskar, is a kind of a history of these three magazines which were launched by Kirloskar. This Kistrim, what they are called as Kirloskar, Stree, and Manohar. So this is an interesting work. Even I have used it as a primary source because the editor herself has written the history. So ideas how the different editors like Shanta and Bai and others, why they felt like coming, they from time to time they came up with different kind of columns. So what was the idea behind that, that I could get from this kind of work. Now, these are the photographs of Shankarrao Kirloskar, which I've taken from his autobiography, Shamwakiya. In the first page, sorry, on the left-hand side, you can see Vaka Kirloskar, his father and mother, Saraswati Bai, who was, in those times, in the 19th century, she has started Saraswati Vidya Mandir in Solapur. And she was quite I would say ahead of her times. If you see, because in 60s, 1860 or something, she had started this Saraswati Mandir. The other photograph when Shankar Rao went abroad for further education, at that time it was taken. This is the work of Americanization of Edward Burke, which influenced him, and Shamwakiya, which I have extensively used for my study. Oh, this is a quote, but anyways, there's not much time, so I'll not talk much about that. These are the editors, like Anandibai Kirloskar, who unfortunately was, she did not have a long life. So then Shankar Rao alone had to work as an editor after a few years. And then the next generation, Shantabai, Mukund Rao, and Vidya Bhan. Yeah, Vaka Kirloskar and Shamwaki and Anandibai. Now, this poem, which I came across in the 1944 issue of Stree, so I really found it interesting that a new woman, this concept has been discussed in Stree itself, that they are talking about that there is something called as new women that are coming up, and how Shalini Soman, she has written this poem, she narrates how she's different from the previous generation women, that she's strong and she's confident and things like that. I've tried to translate it. Okay, now a few things which I could not take up in my talk, like the new woman and Stree came up with a lot of discussions on women's liberation pertaining to her physical, different, outer identity as well, like physical identity. So this shift from 9-yard sari to 5-yard sari was also very difficult. Shantabai, in one of in her work, she has mentioned that when she had to herself wanted to start using 5-yard sari, it was not difficult for her, and she had to take permission from her own grandmother and her mother, and she had to persuade them. And this is, so one can see that these 5 women, this shift in their costumes in the last 50 years, how it has been shown in one of the photographs in Stree. Okay, this is the first cover page of Stree, and स्त्रियांच्या हितासाठी वाहिलेले उपयुक्त स्फूर्तिदायक व मनोरंजन मासिक, where he said that he wants to underline Striya Abala Navet. Very interesting. Now, the very second issue, in the second issue, Kirloskar Vaditil Amche Don Divas, meaning when they Shankar Rao wanted to launch this magazine, he had invited the significant scholars in Maharashtra to come up, and he wanted to discuss and disseminate this whole idea, and that how he wanted to create a band of writers for Stree. So the article based on that particular to get together came up in the second thing. And on the backdrop of the Gandhian movement, one can see that women with charkha, it was continuously discussed in Stree in those times, in 1940s and 30s and 40s. So they came up with different discussions on, as I mentioned, the editors used to play a significant role in initiating discussions on various topics, such as payment for domestic work, or 9-yard sari, or reform in women's costume, etc. Okay, this is, as I mentioned, that they try to come up with some symposia and seminars based on women's issues. So they became, you know, they were working with a missionary zeal. So it was not just a business for them, it was basically a mission. And so they wanted women to come up and discuss and debate about the issues which they are facing. So at different places, not just in Kirloskarwadi, but at different places in Maharashtra, they initiated these symposiums. Yeah, these are some more photographs of Shamaki and Mukundra and Shantabai. Anyways, now a very significant thing. I just you need not need to read this entire thing. I'll just mention it in few lines, few minutes. That this became a significant topic, like whether the widow should be applying kumku, and then a woman writes that why we have to see if there is any sanction of scriptures for that, when men, they get up and they smoke, and they don't even take bath, and this is how nobody questions whether it has been approved by the scriptures. Why every time when women do something, we have to always see that whether it has been approved by scriptures? So women challenging patriarchal norms, one can see through Stree, this thing. Very interesting thing when this was launched, that when Shankar Rao in editorial mentioned that women to ponder upon this issue, that whether widows should be invited for Haldi Kunku ceremony. In Akola, Gopal Ganesh Agarkar's daughter-in-law, Maltibai Agarkar, and other women, they came up and they organized a Haldi Kunku ceremony for women, wherein widows were invited and they were given Haldi Kunku. So this was something very interesting and welcoming sign. Now, for the costumes, this was also interesting debate, and the July issue of 31 came up with this cover page, and they also reproduced this idea that Gopal Ganesh Agarkar had discussed in Sudarak in the 19th century in his newspaper, that women's costumes should bring, because costume should be for the comfort, and if women are performing various jobs, and if they find this 9-yard sari cumbersome, we have to bring changes. But since the changes were happening at a slow pace, Stree had to take up this issue and again. So I am mentioning just one article. Many such articles on women's issues in those times came up, and women wrote. And in fact, Kashibai Kanitkar's daughter also wrote, and many others also wrote about women's costumes. Sorry. Now, these are the cover pages that I would like to show, that how through the attractive images, the idea of new woman, woman who is reading in this cover page, perhaps she's working, but look at the face, look at that women should not, lead their life with in a drudgery, or the in the very dark room somewhere, not enjoying life. So very positive image and positive ideas about women should be able to enjoy the life, and they should be having some happy moments in their life. Also, the next cover pages will tell us more about the new image of new woman. She also came up with various activities, like how women should take up exercise and health issues very regularly and seriously. And here one can see that woman with a badminton racket, woman reading a book. And look at the hairstyles also, the faces also. One can see that very attractive and having some nice facial features. Women have been portrayed. So quite romantic images, attractive images came up. And thanks to the different artists like Ambikabai Durandar, and Shankar Rao himself was an artist. So with a band of some Baburao Painter and many other artists, he could, these images must have had a good impact in the Marathi speaking communities. Look at here, these couples which are the intimacy, physical intimacy, and sometimes it became a controversy in Stree that why they are showing the couples sitting in such close, physically so close, like reading something. And So this is a new image, perhaps, or a new idea, that idea of a companionate wife and happy marriage that Stree could come up with. Sometimes, if you look at the faces, they seem to be coming not from the some kind of an influence of the features are not very Indian. They look quite European sometimes. Look for that. Say this the first issue when a mother and a child. This child looks more not as an Indian in features, looks little European in her features. Even the idea of a very loving father, caring father is seen cover pages. Many more are there, like I cannot show all of them, that sometimes women sitting along with men near riverside or near a lake or in the garden, this has been shown. And perhaps there is a scholar, Ashwini Tambe. She has worked and she has come up with a very nice article on based on the cover pages in Stree and how she has found change from 1930 to 65. And this is her argument is in the post-independence times, this whole idea of woman through only cover pages, motherhood was more reinforced, and her role in the inculcating the ideas of nationalism. And so mothers as a responsible mothers, they have to now play a role while inculcating these ideas of nationalism in the children. And so motherhood was more reinforced in the post-independence time. This is what her argument is, which I have taken in my work. So one can see that after 46, these couples which have been seen on the cover pages, in the 47 onwards, one can see that motherhood and homemaker, this idea of women was more, shown through the cover pages. So women performing, doing cooking or embroidery or along with children, this came up again and again. Then, as I mentioned, the third phase of Stree, one can see that this series of articles with Shankarrao Kharat, and they talked about the Wadari women and Koli women, tribal women. So this change can be seen through even cover pages. Okay, so as I mentioned that in the post-1955 period, there was more thrust on columns in Stree on childcare and parenting. So this is just a table mentioning that. Mulanchi, Chaya Chitre, and then about parenting, and what role the parents could do. And in these special issues that I mentioned about life of women in Nagpur or Baroda or Marathwada, Assam, and things like that. Now, I'll just rush with, these are the advertisements. I do not have enough time for that, but a lot of advertisements of different vessels like cooker, and then ready-made food products, vessels which are more better for using to reduce the drudgery of housework, and Bedikar masale, these spices which are still in circulation, and also this Rupavati Stree Honacha Margavar, the way these kind of things. Okay, so here I stop. Thank you so much. I think I've taken more time than that was allotted to me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jaswandi. It was a fascinating presentation.
Thank you, sir.
And something you brought out the entire change of, say, the change does not come so easily. It has to, and what I saw from many of your pictures is that it was not only creating a female consciousness, making them aware of it. First, they must be made aware of what are their status in the society,
Right.
in the family, in the society, as against the state. Not only that, then disseminate other ideas of things. So it worked a didactic approach of through this Stree magazine, because it had a mission-like function that they performed. And you also brought out the flip side of that. You also brought out how it was primarily before independence, it was middle class, then how it expanded its roots to other marginalized women. And I I I have gone through, because you have in 1 hour what the beautiful way succinctly you put it. It was a fascinating presentation, and I at the moment would like to see if there are any questions for you, and say, apart from the thoughtful article loaded with revolutionary narrative, there used to be short stories. Now, short stories are a part of it. I'm telling you, say Pramod Pathak. It carried number of ways, genre, short story, say not just Lagu Katha, but Lagu Kadambari. Then you have also poems, and Lalit Lekh, ज्याला आपण म्हणतो तसं. It carried number of literary genre in this. So I think the question itself, I mean, what you have already spoken by itself gives an answer.
Yeah.
There is another question from Sandeep Daisarkar to this Daisarkar. Did ladies from Maratha royal families write anything in this magazine? What were their views on articles about? You know, and then there is an also where the Kirloskar, where the Kirloskar is unique in industrialists taking the lead for progressive. See, it is not just because of what she has stated, and I would like to bring this out again. It is not that because they were industrialists, they wanted to make it as a business proposal. No, they had a certain social commitment, and it was with that commitment they did it. Industrialists, their whole business affair was different, and this was so the social responsibilities, societal responsibilities were different. And there is you contextualize, and your pictures also show, because they were also taking Gandhian thought, and it was within that whole thing that, and the word which you used, perhaps I would like to tell the audience that when Dr. Jaswandi said All India, that was All India Women's Conferences, because that was also a forum where they were discussing. But the debates were carried on in this. That's what she has also mentioned. And there are hardly any more questions in that. And if there is somebody who wants to ask question, of course, there are some appreciations from, some very good appreciations from Murdula Ramanna, then my friend Professor Raja Dikshit, and many, Shubha Khandekar, and many of them. It has been a wonderful, it has been a good presentation, certainly. I mean, since there are hardly any questions now, I would like to ask you, there are certain names which you have mentioned, Premabai Kantak. So Premabai Kantak was a important lady in the Gandhian movement. There, Dada Dharmadikari. Now, you have mentioned Bhaskara Jadhav, because in the 30s, in the 40s, Bhaskar Jadhav was one of the most important non-Brahmin leaders.
Yes.
You said in the later times it was Shankarrao Kharat and those, but they belong to the same category. You say they were non-Brahmin leaders at that
Yes.
time. So there it is rightly as you put it. You know, it may be primarily earlier middle class women for middle class,
Yes.
but it gradually tried to encompass number of other issues, number of other marginalized people, and discuss their problems too. Would you like to add something more on that? There
Just
are, I
yeah.
also felt, there were, when you were showing those things,
Mhm.
the front pages,
Yes.
there are persons like Pugas Rahasrabuddhe,
Yes.
Sir V.B. Joshi.
Yes.
V.B. Joshi was not only a legal expert,
Mhm.
V.B. Joshi wrote as a Maratha historian, The Clash of Three Empires.
Oh.
Pugas Rahasrabuddhe is the one who wrote Agarkaranche Samaj ke hai Chintan. That book is very. So there are
Yes.
quite a number of people. And
Yes.
earlier, your photograph, I've seen Phadke also talking,
Yes.
Nasi Phadke.
Mhm.
So there are, and Nasi Phadke was writing at a time when you say contraception was being discussed at that time with,
Yes.
contraception. Nasi Phadke himself has written quite a lot on contraception.
Yes.
Yes. So they were discussing number of these ideas
Mhm.
and, changing the status. And I would like to ask you, because law is, bringing legislations
Yeah.
creates a very kind of, consciousness.
Yes.
And this was all started at a time
Mhm.
when you have the first H.S. Gaur in 1926-27. Then after that, immediately the same same bill in a little different format comes with Harbildas Sarda,
Yes.
Child Marriage Restraint Act,
Yes.
and it comes. So how far the things are discussed in that? The issues are discussed in this Stree magazine.
You mean to say in terms of legal reforms?
No, in terms of that debate, because that debate, there is also
Mhm.
there
Child.
is
Yeah. Yes.
legislation. When the legislation comes, there are for and against.
Yes.
When you said
Mhm.
that after 55,
Yes.
55, it was a little reactionary thing because of the Hindu Code Bill,
Mhm.
and it had to be withdrawn
Yes.
and then brought in 4 legislations.
Yes.
And therefore, the predominance of a different, class of status quoist,
Yes.
that reflects later on, that I suppose that reflects. But this is one way of bringing social change.
Yes.
There are also legal cases,
Yes.
like in the 19th century,
Yeah.
you have legal cases of Maharaja libel case, which
Yeah.
my senior colleague,
Mhm.
Dr. Usha Thakkar, has written a wonderful article.
Mhm.
Then you have, you say, Rakhmabai case.
Yes.
Then you have,
Vijayalakshmi.
so these are,
Vijayalakshmi. Yeah.
that brings consciousness among the
Yes.
very status of women.
Yes.
That remains.
Mhm.
But this was entirely a very fascinating presentation, Dr. Jaswandi. Is there any questions? I'll just see. There is a question from Shubha Khandekar, where the Kirloskar's unique in industrialist taking the lead for progressive change. They were, yeah. And there is a
Yes,
uh,
of course.
uh,
They were progressive. That is what I think
Yeah.
throughout the presentation I have mentioned.
Shweta Deshmukh has written, Jaswandi, what will be your suggestion for today's magazines taking up women's issues to focus on the matters other than the formal equality emphasized by liberal feminism?
Well, I think today's magazines have gone quite ahead of Stree.
Yeah.
Because they are talking about intersectionality, they're talking about marginalized women. If we look at the different magazines that I mentioned,
Yeah.
Baiza, and Baiza now is closed down, but Mirun Sarazani and many other, Puna Stree Uvacha, and these magazines, and also the other. So I think they are doing wonderfully.
Yeah. I would like to ask my dear friend, Professor Raja Dikshit, would you like to say something on this? Yes.
Oh,
Unmute. You unmute.
unmute. Yeah.
You unmute. Unmute. He is not unmuted.
Just a minute, I'll try myself.
Yeah.
What I was saying was, this is an excellent presentation, very interesting, very fascinating. And since I already had discussions with her, I have no specific questions. Actually, I'm eager to know about the views of others. That's why I'm just listening to others.
Yes. No, I have seen her right from the first time, review, growing her in thought. I've actually been a witness to her thought process. So
I believe that the very topic chosen by her for this particular research is academically as well as socially relevant.
absolutely,
And
no
she
question
has
about.
done a thoroughly well presentation, well studied, and this should be published in the form of book. That is my suggestion.
So that is the thing I'm going to tell the Dr. Jaswandi, that she should made it print ready. Huh? Because when you prepare a thesis like it, the language is different. When you do it with a book, then there are certain print ready things to be made. So I'm sure she will made, and you say Kama Institute will be delighted to go ahead with this kind of publication. Kama has done earlier wonderful publications, and certainly they will be very much interested in. But in that, one will have to remember the things. Your all this, you say how you discuss with your first presentation. They should be in the resolutions, which are in a 600 resolutions. Then otherwise printing becomes very difficult.
Yes, right.
So whether even these pictures of Shankar Kirloskar and also, they will have to upgrade it to 1 GB, 1 MB.
Okay.
Otherwise, you can't. It will be split, and
Right.
it's very blur kind of thing you will see.
Okay.
So you will have to ask some professional photographer
Okay.
to upgrade this
Fine.
into 1 GB photographs.
Okay.
Then they can be printed in a book.
Okay.
Otherwise, they will be very difficult. Nobody will be able to print them.
Fine.
Huh? And you will also have to take, please, whatever from source that you have taken,
Yes.
you will have to take, submit a letter of no objection.
Yeah.
Otherwise, one of the most important thing comes, nowadays, you say her rights or copyrights are so much that people are very, when you publish, they are very, very, people are very, publishers are very concerned about these copyrights,
The copyright issue is always there.
Yeah.
One has to be very careful about that.
So one has to take the permission, but this whole thing will have to upgrade it in terms of photography.
Yes.
To make it, get it printed well. And we recently had this kind of a problem, when I published my book in 2020, I had to spend 10,000 to upgrade them. Because you see, they cannot be printed otherwise. They cannot be printed.
Okay.
So you take care of all these.
Fine, sure. Yes.
And make it a print ready. The Kama will be very much interested. Certainly, that is the one thing that we have always said. To when the copyright is a rights remain with Kama of publishing, and Kama has done very good publications so far. Uh, can I ask Professor Nawaz? Professor Nawaz? Yeah, she has not.
Yeah, she's on mute.
Yeah,
She needs to unmute herself.
yeah, she has to unmute herself. Professor.
Well,
Some
Thank
problem.
you. I think I should be audible now.
Yes, you are.
So, I mean, I'm really very delighted to hear this presentation because all the while we were working
Yes,
with Dr. Jaswandi work out, but here we see the entire thing in its essence as a wonderful piece of work. We're very happy that we have been able to produce something like this and to hear this presentation. And I will certainly put this matter up before the trustees, whether we want to publish it separately, whether in what form it should be able to be published. And I hope that this inspires others
yeah,
to apply for the Avabai Wadia Research Fellowship and keep up the kind of standards and traditions that go with this fellowship.
yeah.
So thank you very much, Dr. Jaswanti, for taking so much trouble and working so hard and making it possible to finish this project in such a wonderful way. Thank you,
Professor
Dr.
Nawaz,
Ganachari, as always.
Professor Nawaz,
with the-
one more thing I would like to add. I must have advised her n number of times to input this and do that and do that. But I must admire her for not saying a word about it and religiously doing that work.
That's right. Unlike some other
That's
scholars.
the quality of a very good researcher.
Absolutely. Open
Very
to
good researcher.
improvement.
And yes, we are very delighted to have the presentation. Yeah.
Thank you very
Yes,
much, Dr. Ganachari. And thank you, the
it was
audience.
my pleasure to be chairing this session. Yes. It was,
And to have you with us for the fellowship, Dr. Ganachari. It makes a
Yeah.
world of difference. I thank the audience. I think they were a little quiet because very few people know something about Stree.
yeah.
I did not till I heard Jaswanti take up this project, which has reached such a rich fruition. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
And,
you.
I'm
Thanks.
happy
Thank
that
you. Thank you.
my friend and Professor Raja Dixit also joined us, and we will be very happy at the Kama. You will be always on the mailing list, and we would like to have your comments too for every presentation that we will have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Dixit.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, should we conclude then?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can leave now.
Should I stop recording now?
Yes.
Yes, I think so.